Good morning, guys. Welcome to day 211 until I'm a YouTube millionaire. Today is going to be a review of C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. So C.S. Lewis, an author, a Christian author actually, author of the best-selling book, The Chronicles of Narnia, among other very good bestsellers. One of the great great British writers of the 20th century. He calls this book Mere Christianity because what it is supposed to be is the very bare bones basics of what it is to be Christian, why one should be Christian as opposed to not, etc. He calls himself a layman, Christian, because he's not really a layman because he actually has a pretty dang good understanding and knowledge of it, but he has the humility to say that he is, which is one of the primary virtues, humility. So, but this is basically an adaptation of a series of talks that he had on the radio back in circa 1943, it looks like. And it makes sense because it was in the middle of the Second World War, and it was meant to encourage the soldiers that were going over to fight against the Nazis to give them something worth fighting for, because it's hard to think that what you're fighting for is worth it when there's really no differentiation, no underlying foundation between you and everything else. And we are a civilization that is built upon Christian virtues, Christian morals. It is what has gotten us to the point where we are today. It's kept civilization going. We can't see what would have happened had Christianity not been here, as opposed to what is happening now, because that requires a completely parallel timeline to which we have no access at this point. But to that point, one of the things that C.S. Lewis brings about in this talk is, if you're looking at somebody, say Susie, who's a Christian and is cantankerous and kind of a prick, and then let's say Robert, who is an atheist but is very kind and loving, it seems, and all that, you're like, why would anybody go Christian if Susie is such a horrible person? At least she appears to be. And Robert is very kind. You're not really being a very good representation of Christianity and not encouraging people to go towards it if that's the type of person that you are. And that's us being, to the best of our ability, the emulations of Jesus. That's what we're supposed to be, men and women. If you are a follower of Christ Jesus, you emulate him as best you possibly can. And he's making the point that you don't know what their lives would have been had they not become Christians, as opposed to had they become Christians. So perhaps Robert would have become a saint had he become a Christian, as opposed to simply being a kind man. Somebody who literally could do miracles, as you and I can see. And then Susie would have been maybe a mass unaliver, right? Or something to that effect, or an abortion advocate, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. We can't know what their lives would have been. The point is, you're pointing towards Christ and you're trying to become a better person. Wherever you are, there you are. Or wherever you find yourself, there you are. This is actually something that my friend Sonia said last night when we were chatting. And wherever you are, there you are. It's absolutely true. It is absolutely true. Basically, we are turning our tin bodies, we being simply creations of Christ, or creations of God, right? And not actually begotten by him. Begotten means that you are of the same mold as him. You basically are him. That's what Jesus is. Jesus is God and also human, right? And Jesus being born of Mary makes him both human and God. So we are creations of God, but not begotten. And what Jesus is trying to do is he's trying to actually make us adapted into begotten, right? So turning the tin being that is simply a puppet into a being of flesh that actually has consciousness and agency. And something else I talk about in my other videos, which he actually brings up in this talk series towards the end of it, is that you can actually shine light onto DNA of other creatures, depending on the frequency and the purity of it, and literally change their DNA simply by shining that light on it. There were actually experiments even back in this time frame, the 1940s, where scientists were doing that and it worked. There are scientific studies, experiments where chameleons have been turned into lizards and vice versa, simply by having certain frequencies and purities of light shined down into their DNA when they were in utero. He actually talks about that towards the end of this book. It's incredible. In addition to that, something else that I thought was a very synchronous thing is C.S. Lewis talks about marriage and being connected to a significant other and all that, and basically saying he has, in not so few words, a very similar philosophy to me. Who would have thought? We're both Christians, right? Almost as if God set up that synchronicity intentionally, almost as if C.S. Lewis could kind of, in a Mandela effect, go back in time and change the words in his own story to make it more appropriate to me, because he's trying to help me, being a saint, being a messenger, right? That thing that we all are. And Jesus is trying to teach us how to become. And if we ever become it once, we become it for all time. Because everything's happening simultaneously in a reality without time. In a reality beyond time, which, by the way, he talks about in this story as well. It was so synchronous with my own thoughts and ideas that I was very much mind blown. I really was. And I even said many a time up to God and heaven, I thanked C.S. Lewis. And I absolutely did. I'm like, it was almost like I felt, you did that for me, didn't you? And I was just so grateful for it. So grateful for God, for everything he's done for me. And so grateful for everything that C.S. Lewis did for me too, and is doing for me. Because he's not dead, none of us die. He's up there probably watching me read this book, just like he does for everybody. And the more profoundly you follow the truth, the more eyes you're going to have on you. Both evil eyes and good eyes. So you're going to have the devil getting closer and closer to you because you're getting over the target. You're about to drop the bomb, right? And he's shooting the flak at you, trying to stop you from shooting or dropping that bomb on him. Because if you drop that bomb, he's going to be gone. And C.S. Lewis is basically the guy who's trying to aerial refuel you and help you out while you're doing it. And I felt like C.S. Lewis was doing that with this book. It was so profoundly impactful, connected to the way I'm thinking right now. And it's supposed to be a very basic book for people who are on the fence, atheists who are starting to question whether they should believe or not, agnostics who are trying to question whether they should believe or not, that it's meant for everybody. Another thing that I talk about on my other videos on this channel is that Christianity works for everyone. What I am doing here is bridging the difficulty with the reasoning and the logic for those with much more powerful minds that need that explanation in order to accept it. Totally get it. Totally get it. You guys are really smart and you need somebody to explain it to you, the things that are hard to figure out. And I'm not saying I'm like some prophet or oracle or anything, but I have some ideas, right? And it's also meant for the person who doesn't think to that level, who's simply a layman or even, less than average intelligence, right? Who can click the I believe button. This works for everybody. And intelligence can be seen as a handicap, if you think about it in that way. But it's not. It's just that, you need a little bit more in-depth explanation because you're more mature. And this is going to work for the young people, the younglings, the Padawan learners in Christianity, and the saints, the people who are really along the path of understanding. And I think I was broaching it, but I forgot. I didn't continue the discussion. I apologize. But his discussions on marriage and interpersonal relationships were just so appropriate to what I've been thinking and all that stuff. It's like, in not so few of words, he essentially says the same thing that I've been parroting, right? That if you even think of being with another woman who isn't your wife or another man who isn't your husband, then you've already committed adultery. And telepathy, and eventually we're going to get to the point where those walls are going to be completely taken down. And what I'm explaining here is that bridge to show people how exactly that would work to navigate us into eternity, which is coming. So, it's a very good book. I very strongly recommend it. And everybody, whether you're on the fence, a staunch atheist, a nihilist, a saint, it doesn't matter. Everybody can benefit from this. It's impressively good. So that's what I got for you today. As always, it's a pleasure, guys. Love you all. Peace.